All right, everyone. Now let's look at the differences between automation and AI agents. Let's do it in one line. Automation follows rules, AI agents make decisions. Simple. That's the one line. Now let's break all of that down from various different angles. What do I mean by that? Look, when you're building any type of automations, you need to know the steps. That means you need to have a core logic. The key concept is core logic. In automation, it's the basic principle that you follow is if this, then that, correct? And AI agents operate a little differently. AI agents will say, no, what is my goal? Okay. So given this goal, let's figure out to achieve it. So that's the core logic that an AI agent follows versus these are the steps given to me, I will follow it. So that's the core logic difference between those two. Now let's go another layer. Whether these two, how do they interact with the dependency on humans? Now, automation is heavily dependent on humans. Why? Because you need humans to tell it, what it requires to do. So the rules and the sequences, right? Automation is basically sequencing. So unless and until a human gives that sequence, it is basically following human given sequences or rules. Okay, let's not beat the bush, but that's the core aspect. Again, here when we talk about AI agents, it requires human just to validate the goal, but it can decide independently and adapt the path of those, like the sequence, it can change. So it's like variable outputs in a way. So that's a difference between an AI agent versus automation. I hope we are diving now deep a little bit on each, so it's making sense. But again, whenever in doubt, go back to that one line. That one line is AI agents decide, automation follows the rules. That's all. Now, let's look at it from the adaptability perspective. Now, you can tell that all that I've said in the past 2, 3 minutes, AI agents are going to be more adaptable because if something changes in that sequence or one of those rules is an outlier, your automation is not going to be able to handle that. Whereas an AI agent will be able to, it's more dynamic. It can learn from the outcomes, it can adjust its decisions and try alternative paths. So it has that loop behind it, whereas in automation, you will not have that. Now let's look at some of the examples. So for example, if you've used the tool Zapier, where you have certain rules. So let's take this example. There's a very common example using automation. If a record is updated in your database, so your database, just let's say it's the users on your app. If there is a new user that comes on your app, then trigger this email which says welcome. Now that's a very common use case. That's a ubiquitous use case of automation. Zapier is one of the tools that you can use, Airtable, all of them have these kinds of AI agents are a little different. Okay. AI agents will say that given that you have a new user, depending on the time that they have signed up, and depending on the region and stuff, it can customize the email and it can make the decision on its own. Now, this is powerful as well as detrimental in many regards, but you see the difference. Okay. Automation is where you will have sequenced rules. And again, with AI agents, it will be able to get those decisions made on its own, given the data that it sees. So there you go. That's like the main difference between theirs. There are certain other ways to look at it as well. I've given you a nice table that juxtaposes both of these together. But the core principle remains the same in all of it is how do you perceive the environment? So an automation will perceive the environment in a fixed routine, whereas AI agents have the ability to adapt to the changes in its environment, whether it's a screen or whether it has like sensors to adapt what it's seeing in front of you. So that's the core difference between an AI agent and automation. I hope this was clear. We'll take more examples to actually clear this further. But I hope this video helps you to make your vocabulary a little sharper when you talk about automations and artificial intelligence agents. Thank you again for listening to this video, and I look forward to seeing you on the other one.